because it's loading. So I'm watching Facebook on another computer while I'm on this computer. I got cameras.
Right. Yeah, you got the game down. You didn't learn how to how to navigate.
So I'd like to thank you guys. I mean, I know some of you guys pop on a little bit early. Some of your feeds a little bit early when you're coming on to Dr. Paul Bridges Live, and also working with Black Coffee Conversation. And this is one of these Black Coffee Conversations we're having, and we're talking with Mr. Darrell Duke. So, and thank you guys for joining me on Bridges Live on Apple Tunes, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on with Dr. Paul and Bridges Live and Black Coffee Conversations. So, Mr. Darrell Duke has a podcast he's starting to run. You're out in California, Darrell, so I know I'm on this East Coast thing, and we got some sunshine, but you got a lot of good sunshine out there. So tell me about that sunshine you got.
Oh, it's marvelous, man. It's just wonderful out here. I came to California I spent 3 years prior to coming out here in New Orleans. And the weather's nice there, too. They get quite a bit of rain, but it's nice. I love New Orleans. I lived in Metairie, which is a suburb of New Orleans, but I loved it. Prior to that, I'm actually a native of Texas. I'm a Texas boy.
Okay.
But you can't beat this California weather. I'm in Southern California, Riverside, which is about 60 miles from LA.
Yeah. I mean, I know areas well. I travel a lot, but let's get right in. You know, you have a podcast called Black Consciousness, and that's how we end up meeting up, and we want to talk about with everything that's going on. Black consciousness is important. So tell us about what you're thinking about Black consciousness and why you wanted to start this process and get this conversation going.
Well, first let me thank you, Dr. Dyer, for inviting me on your show and for all you're doing to bring about awareness. And that's what Black consciousness is about, bringing about awareness to our people. A lot of our people, unfortunately, are not familiar with their history.
Yes.
There's a lot of history, even with regards to what's going on now with the slaying of the young man, Mr. George Floyd, in the street with the officer kneeling on his neck. If you know your history about this country and how it came about, the first police officers were overseers. They were called overseers and constables. And they were brought about after Bacon's Rebellion. I don't know if you're familiar with Bacon's Rebellion. It was the first rebellion of its kind in this country. It happened in 1676, where some free white men, there was only a few free white men in this country at that time. Most individuals were either poor, white, they called them indentured slaves, indentured servants, but they were indentured slaves. They were also property of the plantation owners as well as the African slaves, and there were Indian slaves that a lot of people are not aware of historically. Indian slavery actually was something that went on well into the 19th century.
Yeah.
But they instituted, after that Bacon's Rebellion, they instituted law enforcement with the overseers and the constables. And the only people at that particular time that had any power at all were the plantation owners. So they were the ones who instituted the overseers to oversee the African slaves, the Indian slaves, and the poor white slaves, to keep them in order, basically, and keep them in line and keep them from ever rebelling again. So they also instituted what was called, what we now know as white privilege, because they separated the whites at that point from the blacks and Indians. They said, hey, because you are white, you can no longer put yourself, or you can no longer mingle with these people. And we're going to make you overseers over these people. And because you're white and you're subjects of the king, you can no longer be whipped without a court order, because they could still be whipped, because they were being whipped and beaten and all those other things, just like the African slaves were being treated. They were all as one. They lived together. They slept together. They even intermarried and had children together in some cases. So, in order to disrupt that, when they rebelled, they burned Jamestown almost to the ground, and they held out for 10 months. And in that 10-month period, the King James sent troops over to quell it. During that time is when the plantation owners put together this plan of action, which basically all the things we see today started then. The classism, they separated the whites from the blacks. They added that status of white. By doing that, they took away any rights that the blacks had. They made them chattel slaves, which meant they were strictly property. They had no legal rights or any other rights for that matter, no resources, no services, putting them at the bottom of the rung, the poor. The whites were now the middle class, the overseers and constables, and then you had your rich, of course, the upper class, the plantation owners, which is what we still see today, the rich, the middle class, and the poor. It was all actually started, law enforcement was started at that point. Black laws or black codes was what they were called during that time. A black man couldn't look a white man in the eye and things of that nature. So on my page, Black Consciousness, you made a picture of Mary Turner being hung.
Yeah.
She was hung and she was shot. Her body was riddled with bullets. She was burned. She was pregnant. Her body was, her stomach was cut open. The baby fell out. They stomped the baby to death. All of these images, there's an image of two black men being hanged kind of in a town square with all these white people standing around. I do that purposely to remind us that we can never forget all of the black people who died in the struggle, so that we could get to where we are today, and we still have a long way to go.
You know, we don't ever hesitate, and if this is not ever a comparison. And you know, this is a time for, we're not apologizing for anything, but when we talk about the Holocaust, everybody wants to remember that, and the country doesn't ever want to forget the Holocaust, right? But people want to forget about what has traumatized African Americans in this country after slavery and what they've done to us, and we have never been mentally helped. Emotionally, no one's ever said, you know what, we traumatized them, let's get them some help. And I've always talked about black consciousness or just trauma and how it affects our consciousness and a subconscious level, how it affects our biochemistry on a chemistry level, how it affects our whole being on so many levels. And yet it's, to me, what's shocking, what's always will be shocking, is how people are so shocked when we are upset.
And man, you hit the nail on the head. They talk about the Jewish Holocaust, and it's okay to talk about that. But every time we bring up slavery, oh, when are you guys going to get over it? You know, when are you going to let that go? You know, and you talk about the trauma that we've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Like no other people imaginable. We've experienced trauma from seeing our loved ones tarred and feathered in front of us during slavery, to seeing on the evening news black men being shot or choked out or kneeled on until they die. Do you know what kind of PTSD that is for our kids? The kind of trauma that causes. And as you said, they've never had as a people, we've never had an opportunity to heal from all of the traumatic stuff we've had to deal with, from unfair incarceration to the civil rights movement, being beaten on the streets, don't pick on us. You know, in fact, I think that we should have free mental health care as a reparation. Because let's get into that. Because
let's get into that.
That, in fact, have you read the book? I'm going to put it up here by Dr. Joy DeGruy. I've been in contact with her. I have read her stuff,
And I was going to mention her. You beat me to the punch because we are post-traumatic slave disorder. That is our PTSD. That is what we are having to go through. That is the thing that most of all that, I have PTSD from trauma I've had in my life, whether it be from military, whether it be from family issues, sexually molested, all those things. I know what I had to heal just from that trauma. And we're not even talking about the trauma of just being a black man in the United States or just being black in the United States. So I understand my trauma. That's how I try to help people understand how trauma affects their body, how it affects their lives, how it affects their children, how it affects their community, because I know how to heal. I learned how to heal it through my living sciences and modalities that I've studied and practiced and preach and teach. But there's a lot of people who don't understand who they are. And you hit it right on the head. A lot of blacks don't know who they are. So they're running around like they're lost. Not like they're lost. They are lost. They're lost from the connection to all their historical ancestors. Because remember, our ancestors talks to us. They talk to us through genetic code, through our atomic structure. We do not lose connection from our past. That's why they try to rip us away from our history. Because they're trying to get you to stay traumatized for remembering that we're kings and queens. They try to denounce your emotional state when they say that you are not a proud human being of life of this world. So there's a lot more systematic issues going on, and so we understand the action people are taking, but we do want them to go into what you call black consciousness to understand their conscious state, because they have forgotten about their subconscious action. And I know that's a hard, because I did a segment on the healthy mind and talked about what the subconscious is and what the conscious level is, and is the connection of all things. That's the simple explanation of it.
You're so right, Dr. Dyer. And as you know, I'm an author. I've published a couple of books, and I strongly recommend people, that's part of the black consciousness, is reading, so that you can become aware of what is going on and what has happened, what has transpired over the generations, over the centuries. I just so happen to be sitting here, and I have some books, and this one is the New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. It's a great read, as well as Dr. Joy DeGruer's book. I have a book that I'm reading right now, White Cargo, for it's part of the research I'm doing for an upcoming book entitled White Backlash, The Rule of Law, Profit Over Principle. So that book is really about how we got to where we are right now with regards to all of the things that have happened since the Europeans' history in the early 1600s.
Hey, Mr. Duke, let me ask you, and I know we're not going to take up too much of our time here. There's other things that we got going on and that we got to get to, and this is not a last of our conversations about black consciousness and what we're going to be doing. But let me ask you this, because where people are tiptoeing around it, and I know me and my wife have talked about it. What do you think about separation?
Well, I don't think we should have to separate.
Okay.
I think for those that want to stay in this country, definitely should be allowed to stay in this country, should maybe be given some land in this country so that we can have our own kind of country within a country kind of thing, our own nation. So that's the thing that's missing, because every people, whether it be Puerto Rican, African, they have a flag and a land that they're attached to. Black people, we have no association.
Right.
I mean, if you want to associate yourself with that representation of us. So we need our own flag, we need our own land.
Mr. Duke, hold on, Mr. Duke. Mr. Duke, you're breaking up just a little. Mr. Duke, you're breaking up just a little bit. and your camera froze. There it goes. So let's go back when you're talking about what you said about the flag, because we don't have our own flag, and we don't have our own place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's gonna always be a problem for us. As long as we don't have a country to attach ourselves to, like the Puerto Ricans or the Africans or Jamaicans, a land and a flag, we're gonna have issues because we're black. Look at even what we're calling ourselves, black, and who do we allow to? We went from Negro to colored to
Yeah.
is coming up with them for ourselves. Somebody else may be coming up with these terms, but at any rate, there's no flag associated with any of those names, colored, black, Afro-American, and I guess there's a flag associated with that because that's American. But
right.
the flag is never represented us. We was 2/3 of a person when all that came about, the Constitution and everything. So on a very strong note, I think we should spend at least a few seconds on, and that is the reparations. We are in the midst of COVID-19.
Right.
And they've just signed $1 trillion relief stimulus for everybody to get $1,200. Now, think about this, Dr. Dyer. There's only roughly maybe 45 million black Americans in America.
Yeah.
If we gave each African American $5 million, it wouldn't even come nowhere close to $1 trillion.
Nope.
So if we can do $1 trillion stimulus for the people for COVID-19, you mean to tell me we can't do, a $500 million stimulus? And if white people are, and you hear this right now a lot, well, why don't they? Don't like it here. Why don't they just go back to Africa? Okay, well, give us reparations. Pay us for because the Japanese got reparations.
Yes,
the
they did.
Jews got reparations.
Yeah.
The Indians got reparations in the form of lands and reservations. All right, give us some land, give us some money, and then you can say, what do you got to complain about? Now you got it. Then we can accept that, and then we can do what we want to do. As you stated earlier, we can move away. If we want to go back to Africa, we can do that. If we want to start nation building here, we can do that. But it's our choice, and it'll actually boost the economy because, unfortunately, Dr. Dyer, a lot of our people are not educated, which is why we're on here today, and which is why the Black Consciousness page is up. Because a lot of people the black people would take that money and go out and buy Cadillacs and rims, which would only boost the economy, buy houses. Going to boost the economy, create jobs. So it's a good thing for the country as well. So I don't see any argument to it. And now I just saw over in New Zealand, they're protesting. So that means we have the support of other countries right now. Mm-hmm. So we should be taking the United States before the United Nations and putting them on trial before the world for their human rights abuses to black people.
And I agree because I've worked with the UN, the United Nations, and the humanitarian efforts and things like that, and it has been brought before other countries, has been brought up to trial what they've treated their people. And it has been brought up in conversations that I have been privy to, that if the United States been brought up with every charges that has ever been on the UN Charter, of the humanitarian UN Charter, every single one of them has been done against blacks. Everything that you're not supposed to do has been done against blacks as far as the humanitarian thing. And I got another thing for you too, and I want people to think about this, is that we talk about the, being here, the DC, the DMV area, the DC, Virginia, Maryland area, and then
breaking up a little, Doctor.
Being here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Oh, we're breaking up a little bit?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
What about now? Is that better?
I don't know if you're able to hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
I can't hear you though.
Okay, I know we're having a little bit of audio issue.
Okay, no, I still can't hear you.
Okay. with this audio issue, sometimes when we have this, we're having a little bit of audio issue. I do apologize, you people watching this Black Coffee conversation with Mr. Darrell Duke. He has a Facebook.
I'm missing out on some good conversation.
I will make sure you get it sent to. But I want to let you know he's got a webpage up called Black Consciousness. And with this audio, because I do want to have this conversation with Mr. Darrell Duke, and we will have this again. So I want to say thank you guys for listening to Black Coffee Conversation with myself, Dr. Paul, and Mr. Darrell Duke. And we'll be back to you later. So thank you for joining us just a little bit. And I apologize for the audio, but we will pick this